So today is the first event of the series that we're gonna be doing with Wyndham Social. So hi everyone, I'm Leanne from the Blue Journal. I'm also the podcast host for Beyond the Label podcast. So today with me, I have my two very good friends, Flora Ma and Iris Yang. Do you guys just want to tell everyone just 2 sentences about what you do?
Sure. Hi everybody. So my name is Iris. So by day, I'm head of insights and analytics at Google Hong Kong Taiwan. And I'm also a part-time content creator. So I run an account called Pretty and Calm. You can follow me if you want, but also find me if you want to. But yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about how I balance that full-time career, content creation, and then also my family.
Thank you, Leanne, for having me today. So my name is Flora, and I am the co-founder of ONLY Beverages. We are a Hong Kong-based ready-to-drink alcoholic beverage brand, the ones that you're drinking right now. Prior to starting ONLY, I used to work in finance at Goldman Sachs in the Global Markets Group, as well as the strategy consulting group at EY. And also last year, I gave birth to my little boy, Brody, so he's now 1 year old. So I'm really excited to talk to everybody here about how I attempt to balance my mom life at work.
So going to the first question, I'm just going to throw this directly to you guys, which is, what is the biggest challenge balancing work and family?
I would say the biggest challenge for me is definitely time management. So, of course, not only just managing how much time I spend between Brody and work, but also like the time that I can even spend to finish all my responsibilities on both of them.
Yeah, I do like to echo what Laura said. Time management is definitely difficult, but I also think feeling fully present is difficult, right? So when you're juggling a lot of different conflicting priorities, naturally you'll be thinking of one thing while you're doing another. So I feel like, feeling fully present is always a challenge.
Have you ever had to make difficult decisions in times of, struggling, managing your time to priority, like your work or your family or any other things that you're doing? Like, how do you navigate making those difficult decisions?
On a day-to-day basis, so I guess overall, I'm going to start with the biggest decision I probably made to balance my life, which was quitting my job at Goldman. Because that was like the ultimate decision to achieve kind of work-life balance. Like, during that, I think I was working, maybe 15-hour days, and then it got to the point where I was like, I can't focus on a family, I can't focus on, starting ONLY, like doing ONLY on the side anymore. So then I went and made a decision to leave and focus on it full time. And by then I wanted to start a family as well. So that was one of the most difficult things I probably had to do. And then on a day-to-day basis, how I manage my time is I do a lot of routines, and I have calendarization, time blocking, so much time blocking. Like the amount of time that I have spent basically just looking at my calendar, being like, this is what Brody's going to do today. This is what I have to do for work. Is honestly, it saves so much time because I spend the time with it.
Yeah, I think proactively managing time is really important. But as I mentioned earlier, I think that being fully present and also dedicating time where you think it's important and being intentional about that really sets the tone for everything that you do, right? So, my husband and I both have very busy and demanding jobs, and it's really difficult, right, to actually go and spend quality time together. I don't have a child yet, but I consider, spending quality time with my husband just as important. And so when we actually are trying to plan out or juggle our days, we're really, I think that we're good at making sure that the time that we spend together is quality. We're doing new things together, building new experiences, and planning ahead for that. I think that personally, I've always been a very career-driven person. And so it's always been really important to me to put career first. But when I started doing content creation, it actually became a little bit difficult, right, for me to carve out time because many people do content creation as a full-time job. And believe me, it can definitely be a full-time And so ways that I've managed that is also, again, carving out specific times where I can switch off. So I'm no longer, I'm no longer working at Google. I'm now full-time, like, content creating on Sundays, for example, right? So, like, making that space to fully devote yourself to something 100% and being able to switch on and off has really helped me to be able to manage 2 jobs, basically.
I really resonate with what you just said, because I think being fully intentional about how you spend your time is so important with time management, as well as not just carving out like a block of schedule in your iCal or your Google Calendar, but it's also really being like having the mindset to be intentional, to know how you're gonna spend this time, like using what specific mindsets. So do you guys have any practical tips or strategies on how to juggle all these responsibilities? Any apps, any tips, any advice that you've learned from others?
So I think like one way to really intentionally manage time with family is, again, like Flora mentioned, really planning ahead, but getting a little bit more detailed, right? So I think that sometimes we'll block off periods of time where, okay, I'm going to spend time with family. Oh, this is going to be date night. But I think something that's helpful for me is to think like one step deeper, is like, what's the experience that I want to have with them today? Like, for example, my family is in the US, and so I'm not able to spend a lot of time with them as regularly as I'd like. And so when I am with them, right, when I am at home, instead of kind of just sitting around at home and like, watching TV, I will try to plan activities with my parents, with my brother, so that the time that we spend together is really quality time. Or even, when I have downtime at work or something, right? Like, be really intentional about how you use that. And I think, like, understanding what kind of experience, how you want to use your time is equally important.
So I think part of me kind of answered the question before, which was time management, but I think in order to fully, like, strategies and tips, I fully agree, which is sometimes when I'm hanging out with Brody, you have to be fully present, which means you can't use your phone. So that's the thing. It's like, instead of using all these apps and stuff like that to manage your time or anything like that, you just have to sit and like not use a phone or an app. Because when it comes down to it, like the basic tools that we use are calendar is very helpful advice. I use OneNote a lot. I basically jot down all of my thoughts in there, and that really helps. But yeah, I think you just gotta streamline what works for you.
Yeah, I think even like daily tasks and life admin, I'll still put in a calendar invite. Because if I don't do that, it will literally be like, pick up the mail. But if it's not in there, I'm not going to do it. And I think it's about being realistic with yourself. Like, if you don't write it down, are you going to do it? You're probably not. So I think being like, even the smallest details, like writing it down.
I'm loving this so much, actually. I'm just making mental notes in my head right now. So you guys should definitely make some notes too. This is really, really good advice. And I want to go deeper into self-care, because as we all know, self-care is like the most important priority. And unless we take care of ourselves and we're healthy mentally and physically, we cannot really take care of others, let alone go do our job and be at like maximum productivity, right? So I want to ask you guys, like, how do you prioritize your self-care practices and your mental well-being?
So there are certain things, I think, for me that are completely non-negotiables, and it's all about being intentional and planning like what is important to you. So, to do with that as well, you have to kind of plan and into your schedule. Like it's not negotiable for me that I go to the gym, right? So me, I do go to a personal trainer because otherwise it's hard for me to get my ass to the gym. But going to the gym, doing stuff like getting a massage, something for myself where I just have me time when I shut off, and honestly, spending a lot of time with my friends, lunches and dinners, like me, because I don't work at a company like Atlas, for example, right? Or like back working in a company, like I don't get that much social interaction. So I see Brody a lot, I see my helper a lot. So I am very intentional about scheduling in lunches and dinners with my girlfriends in order to feel better with myself and be happy.
Yeah, I think that wellness, both mental and physical, are incredibly important. And you really can't be happy unless you prioritize both of those things. I think for me, firstly, I think a lot of people look at this question as, how do you balance wellness outside of work? But I actually think that that's not possible to do. Work has to be a part of it, right? So when I first started working, my first job was actually at Goldman Sachs as well. And I was really miserable. Like, I really didn't like it. And for me at that point, like, it was really actually weighing on me mentally. And, you know, I was fairly young at that time, but it made me realize, like, you know what, like, all of the reasons that I took this job are not the right reasons. And so for me, I needed to pivot my career, go to a different company that actually matched my own values, right? So I think that if you do work in corporate, that's actually the first step, is like making sure that you work at a place that actually aligns with what's important to you and allows you to live the lifestyle that you want to live. And I like what Flora mentioned about non-negotiables, because for me, you know, I really truly believe that we shouldn't be living to work, right? So making sure that even during your day, during the week, if there are appointments that you need to go to, if there are things that you need to do, making sure that you build that flexibility into your week, and, you know, making time for that so that you feel like you're living a full life, right? You're not just living the precious few hours where you're not working. That is really important. And for me, you know, spending time in nature is also really, really important. I grew up in New York City. I live in Hong Kong. It's a very, very urban environment. But, you know, one of the things that I love so much about Hong Kong is how close we are to nature. I have a lot of plants at home too. I just like to be surrounded by greenery, and I really think that it is actually good for you. So making time and prioritizing being outside and being in nature is also important.
Well, first of all, I really love what Iris said about, like, having a job, having a full-time job does not mean that you don't get to live as well. And everyone have this misconception that, I have to be miserable from like 9 to 6, and then I can finally go have some fun and enjoy and do whatever that I want. But it's not true, and we see two very good examples here in front of us that it's very possible to have a good lifestyle, to be healthy and still do the job of dreams. And I want to ask actually Flora a little bit deeper on this, because since you're the mom here, and I don't have a kid myself, but everyone already says that being a mom is basically a full-time job. So how do you take care of your kid, do your business as an entrepreneur, and still do everything else on the side? I mean, look at the two of them. They're looking amazing right now. So how do you do that?
I think the most important thing for me is I really look at Brody, and I look at what it is that's important to me to be doing with him. Because I have limited time, I look at his schedule and I'm like, what in his day is so important to me that I prioritize? So for the morning, for example, from the time that he wakes up in the morning, from 7 a.m. to 9:30 in the morning, that's like our time. I get him in the morning, we have breakfast together, and then we get a coffee, and then 9:30 I put him down, and that's when I start my work day. So like I really, you know, you have to go through and figure out what are the, I guess, highest things that you prioritize that you want to do. So for Brody, like that's it, and then I'll be like, oh, if I'm busy doing like playgroup, maybe I can't make it that day, and then I'll have my whole list to take out. But basically, you have to constantly be reassessing and prioritizing, you know, what you want during that week, actually. Because, like, for example, last week I was really busy with work. I had to like prepare this pitch deck because we're pitching for this big company, so I didn't get to spend as much time with Brody. Right, so every single week I have different, it's like a constant rebalancing of what's important to me for this week and what are my engagements that I really am focused on. Yeah, it's a constant rebalancing act, basically. You know, it's not like a one size fits all. I can't be like, every day I'm going to do this, but.
Can you guys also share some self-care rituals, self-care practices to all of us that is so important to you?
So I think one of my rituals actually is that every morning I wake up and I have coffee by myself. And I think that I'm honestly, I'm really not a morning person at all. So getting up already is like a huge achievement. But it's something that, you know, it's a ritual that I have to do by myself every day, because if I have that at least like 10 minutes to myself, it's time that I can think, I can kind of be with my own thoughts and know that I have this consistent thing that I wake up to, helps me to then set my intentions for the day. So that's one thing. I also like to make sure that I have time to go for hikes, being outside, right? So that again is a non-negotiable for me. So I think that having a ritual, or I always have the intention to spend time outside. That's also a routine that I like to follow myself.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like the thing with it being a mom in particular is that from the time that Brody wakes up, which is when I wake up, there's very little time to yourself. Like you kind of find slices of time where he's napping during the day from 7 to 7. You can be like, oh, I can get a quick bite in, or I can go out and run a quick errand in, you know? So it's very hard to, I guess, have time to yourself anymore. As any mom, I think, would understand, right? Like you're so busy with your child. So actually, a lot of the times I spend the night after he's gone to sleep, when you're laying there. I don't want to say I'm aimlessly scrolling, but then it's time that you get to spend for yourself, like looking at things that you're like, oh, I have to do this today, And that's basically time you kind of carve out for yourself, where you can figure out things that you really want to look at, or people who you really want to respond to that you haven't talked to. So, being intentional about what you haven't done in the day that you can spend the night.
And I think to build off of that as well, right? So I mentioned that I have my full-time job and then my content creation. And so like every Sunday, I actually I carve out some time to actually edit my content for the week, right? Because I don't have time necessarily to do that in real time every day. And because, my content creation kind of passion project was actually a way that it is more or less like a self-care routine, because it was a way for me to be creative. It was a way for me to have fun. And as difficult as it is to balance sometimes, like for example, like there will be brand events that I want to go to during the week, but I can't because I have to go to work, right? And so I'm intentional about making time on the weekend and say like I'll have 2 to 3 hours where that's the time where I don't have to feel guilty that I'm editing reels, because maybe it seems like it's frivolous, but it's actually really helping me to use that creative side of myself that I don't get to use as much, during the day or during the week. And so I think that, your self-care doesn't have to be like massages. Like it doesn't have to be like, doing your skincare. Your self-care can just be pursuing a passion project. And I think that's actually like a really great way to look at it, and I highly recommend it.
What I really like about what both of you shared is that it's actually very small things, like getting coffee or just looking on social media, or just doing something that is fun for you. Because I feel like when people nowadays, they talk about self-care rituals, they overthink a lot. You have to go to Bali, you have to do all these retreats, you have to go to a salon, and it's like a lot of effort and a lot of money as well. But I think what I'm personally taking out of this is that it's so simple, and it's something that you can do every day in your daily life. Just one little thing that makes you happy. For me, when I was in my full-time job back when I was in corporate, I also loved having a coffee every day and walking out of the office to have a coffee, because it can feel a little bit like restricted when you're in the office all day long. So one little thing can really make a big difference to your day. And I actually want to move on to something a little bit lighter. So both of you are very active in the social scenes and on social media, and I see that you two love fashion, love lifestyle tips. And so I'm going to throw this question to Iris, to you first, that obviously you on your Instagram, Korean Palm, you share a lot of lifestyle hacks, and I've been loving the DIYs and the aesthetic home decor thing that you've been sharing. So can you both share a little bit of a tip or hacks to make your routines a little bit more exciting?
I was hoping you would ask Flora first, but that's okay. I actually would say that sometimes I would like to make things less exciting because there's a lot going on. So I actually think I would answer this question a little bit differently. Is sometimes I actually have to think about how to streamline things, right? Like when you have so many different priorities. And so I think that when it comes to my lifestyle, or even let's say like how I dress, for instance, sometimes I have to go to work and then go to an event right afterwards. And I don't want people at work being like, "You're really nice to me, where are you going?" Or I don't want to show up at the event and be like, "Wow, I'm the only person here who has a full-time job, you know? So I think in terms of like fashion and style, I try to be versatile, you know, like keep them guessing. Like, am I wearing a blazer today because I need to go to a meeting, or is it because I'm doing a panel discussion? You know, like I think sticking to basics that really work for you, but that you can create different looks with, right? So I think that I'm really all about versatility. And then I think in terms of kind of like DIYs or home decor, how to execute these like lifestyle hacks. I think also I really like, I wouldn't call myself a frugal person, but I like a good deal, So I think that's like a principle for me, right? It's always like if I can maximize something or do something myself or with my own two hands, I always try to do that first when it comes to decorating or like putting outfits together or whatever it is.
So the question, how do I make my routine more exciting? So I love to plan dinners and events with girlfriends during the week or on the weekends, so you can add some excitement to your week. Like I may sometimes go overboard. I have like 5 dinners this week, but like it makes me so happy. Like especially for me, I work from home. As I was saying, I don't get that much interaction. So really, like planning these things where you can dress up, look cute, go out. These things make you happy. It's like really easy, right? You just go out for dinner with your group of girlfriends. You guys have some good chats, take some cute pictures, and then like you wake up the next day and you go to work. And you're like, okay, I can do this. So that's like a big thing for me. Maybe just don't overdo it. But yeah.
Wow. I feel like it's actually everything is so simple. Just like through this conversation, like everything can you can be happy, you can achieve so much just following a few basic things. And now we're actually on to our last question before the Q&A session. What is one thing that you want to tell your younger self before you become this version of you, becoming this businesswoman, this family person, this mother for Flora, and this wife? Like, what is one thing, even imagine if you're like telling it to someone younger.
I would tell myself that everything is going to work out and don't worry too much. Focus on the present. You're gonna find your purpose in life and you're going to find what matters to you. And then one day you're going to have a baby that you're gonna love more than anything, more than you ever thought you could. And that's gonna change your whole perspective. I honestly used to be a huge career person. I was working so much, like I just wanted to climb the corporate ladder. But now it's like with Brody, even if I were working at corporate, I feel like I would change my mindset. And it's just, I never thought I would, to be honest. So that's something I would tell myself.
I think if I had the opportunity to tell my younger self just one thing, it would be to care less about what other people think. I think that when you're really trying to understand yourself, it's hard actually to really understand what's important to you, rather than how you want other people to view you. And I think that a lot of the times there are things that we want to try or new things that we want to go after, but we're afraid, right? We don't have the confidence to do that. And we're actually the person that's holding ourselves back the most. And I know that this isn't the most original advice, but it really is true, is that imagine all the things you could accomplish if you did not care that people thought you were stupid, or if you did not care about how people would judge you if you tried them. So if I could tell myself one thing, it would be that.
Thank you both so much for everything that you shared with us today. I mean, I personally learned so much. And now we're going to open up the floor to anyone. If you have questions to Flora or Iris.
So let's say if you guys had a day where everything's fine, I guess if by chance something does go wrong, what's like the tip or the first thing you kind of do to kind of like be like, okay, Iris or Flora, I can tackle this. How would you what sort of mindset things would you tell yourself to kind of go through with the day sort of thing?
So this kind of goes back to a little bit about my life integration and stuff. But honestly, the first thing that I would do is I would probably go call my husband and message my husband. To be honest. And that's just because the point is you have a strong support system, right? Like usually when something goes wrong, you're like you immediately want to message them. You're like, oh my god, like this happened, and then you then talk about it. And the point is, after you message someone, then you talk about it, and then as you talk about it, you go through the process. Then you're kind of analyzing what's happening, right? Then you can think about what you're thinking about. Your thoughts are more clear because you're articulating it either with yourself and with your husband or whoever your support system is, right? Like a best friend or something. So that's typically the first thing that I would do. And then more often than not, through that process, your actions then become clear. And then, usually the person that you're talking to will give you some pretty good advice, or if they don't give you advice, they're just like angry with, they're like, oh my god, like that sucks, but then you feel better, right? So, yeah, that's what I would do.
I mean, depending on what happened, I would probably have a meltdown, like, but I think I would also do what Lord, I 100% would definitely text my husband first, but I think that, if you're not married yet, it's really about like having a support system that you can lean on, but also being vulnerable enough to admit like, okay, things aren't going well. I think actually being able to do that, because I think some people it can be challenging to be vulnerable and be like, oh my gosh, like something bad happened, right? So I think if you are able to reach out to someone, you should already be like patting yourself on the back. But I think that to answer this question two ways, I think at work, if something bad happens and I'm trying to recover, I actually need to sometimes I need to take myself out of the situation, go to a conference room and literally calm down, right? Because there's consequences here if I just act, right? So I think sometimes it's about removing yourself from the situation, but also like Laura said, I think talking it through with someone else is really helpful for me because I only have my perspective, right? But getting another person's perspective to sometimes see your reaction, or at least somebody that you trust, so that if you are doing something wrong or you could be reacting better, if they can help you point that out, that's also really important. So having the right support system and then being vulnerable with them, I think is helpful.
So throughout the journey you guys had, I'm sure there are obstacles or ups and downs. So during your lows, what's something that remind you keep you going or keep you motivated, or is it little things, or is there a life advice or any lesson you learned before that makes you
this is very specific to me, but I'm very close with my parents, so I actually think that anytime something good happens, I think after sharing with my husband, I really want to share it with my parents. And when I'm in my lows, I think also having that support system, and kind of reminding myself that there are people who love me regardless of this failure, that I'm not just the sum of my successes, just like how I'm not the sum of my failures, right? And that allowing myself the room to make a mistake, right? I think remembering that, again, I have, because when you have a setback in one area of your life, let's say it's in your career, right? You have to remember that you can still be a good wife, you can still be a good mother, you can still be a good friend. Maybe you weren't a good, worker that day, but you can be good at other things. And so I think it's important to remember that you are not just one thing. And so when you do suffer failures or setbacks, you have other parts of your life to balance that out. And it's important to remember that.
I think when you have a setback or an obstacle that you're facing, it's not often, but also it's how you perceive the situation, right? Something might happen and you could react oh my god, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, oh, I'm gonna lose my job, or whatever, and you make a mistake, or you didn't get the job that you wanted, right? It's kind of those are obstacles, but it's also sometimes how you view the situation that can then change your reaction to it. Right. So if let's say you didn't get a job, right, and then maybe you go back and reevaluate your life, oh, you know what, maybe that wasn't such a good fit for me, or something like that, right? It really depends on how you see it, and oftentimes you have to remind yourself. So I constantly have reminders, call it cheesy, but I have a folder of motivational quotes that when things go wrong, I kind of pull it up and I'm okay, I gotta work hard, right? This goes into every pillar of my life, my career. I have quotes that help me motivate myself when I'm sad, when I don't feel like working, when I'm dieting, right? If I'm really want to go and eat a lot of food. I'm like, okay, gotta get on track. And like, look at these quotes. So I think it's constantly reminding yourself that like it's gonna be okay, that you can overcome your challenges. You know, it's like positive self-talk. I think is really important because I'm guilty of this as well. Like a lot of times I'm so negative when I talk to myself. So you have to also capture the words that you're saying to yourself. And by kind of reminding yourself of these like not affirmations but like quotes and stuff that you can look at that positive also helps you overcome your challenges.
I actually want to add a little bit on this. Just speaking of quotes, motivational quotes, I have one that I really live by. Based on your question, is that there really is no mistakes or failures in life. They're just a redirection or a lesson. So yeah, I think that one really resonates with me because every path that I took, like eventually leads me to here right now tonight. And I mean, this is really great, right? And it's been a lot of ups and downs, but eventually it's gonna be good.
Riding on Flora's point about feeling guilty about something, like sometimes when for me, sometimes because we're so used to working hard, so like work hard is our mantra. So when you wind down, like spending time with your family, scrolling through your phone, I do guilt trip myself sometimes. So how do you tackle that? Do you guilt trip yourselves, or how do you guilt trip yourself?
So I totally get it because obviously I've been there, and I think this goes to the point where we were talking about earlier, and I totally agree with this. And this is how I overcome it is I have to be intentional. Yeah. So when I'm doing something, I'm fully present, right? So instead of being like if I'm spending time with Brody, I'm spending time with Brody, and I block out the time to spend with Brody, and then I will then block out my time to work, and then when I'm doing that, I'm intentional. So I'm present, and so when I block out my time to school, I'm like, I've already done what I've planned to do and set up to do in the other parts of my day. This is my time. You know, so it's like you have allocated the time to different responsibilities, and then you have fulfilled them, and you're in the present while you're doing that. Right? So that's
Yeah, I absolutely understand how you feel as well. I actually just saw something. I just saw a meme today. I was about to say like I read it in a book, but but it was like, oh, I really need a day. I'm so burnt out. Like I really need a day to just chill out and do nothing. And then the next thought is like, I wonder if there's a more productive way for me to just like chill out and do nothing today. And I totally get how you feel. I think sometimes actually it's acknowledging, building off of what Flora mentioned, about being intentional, but also giving yourself some credit sometimes, right? Like you can say like, I worked really hard this week. I did X, Y, Z. Like my treat is I'm gonna do this to relax myself. And so when you kind of give yourself that credit, and again, give yourself that room, I think that you can mentally give yourself permission to relax. And so like giving yourself back that power and telling yourself that you deserve it.
Actually, I'm curious because over the history, there are when comparing the ratio between men and women achievements, I think more successful men comes rather than women. I think maybe it attributes to the women's role to take care of the family and have great contribution and dedication to the family. But now as the feminism arises and also although it's still like a patriarchal society, and I would just like to ask, how would you view the stereotype and also the social roles changing, and would you foresee like a future with more and more great female entrepreneurs and or other successful figures in the society? How would you view this? And secondly, I would like to ask is nowadays the society is getting more and more diverse, and there are some minority groups. And speaking of the social inclusion, how would you view, for example, in your daily life to interact with some of the social outcasts, for example, the transsexuals, women, the so-called transsexual, or even take it more extreme, like the misogynist? How would you interact with these people? Because I think that I as I grow older, I experience more and more of the different diverse people. So, but I think we all need to embrace social inclusion. So that's why I humbly ask you these two questions. Sorry for any mistakes. Yeah, thank you.
I'll take the first question first, which is feminism, right? So I definitely feel like obviously over the past decades, women have taken a more prominent role at work, right? There's been a lot of female empowerment, but I'm also starting to see recently, especially, some more views that women, or that people only focus too much on work. And then now it's almost being looked down upon to like quit your job and only want to be a mom. You know, which is like almost not like a reversal, but a little bit, because it's almost like it was so focused on feminism. And I think now there should be more of a balance now, right? Like women should not feel attacked for wanting to work, right? Maybe they really enjoy it, or women should not feel attacked for wanting to stay out there. It's like they have different views and they have different values, right? So yeah, I think either of these are approaches to it.
So I can address your second question about diversity and inclusion. I think that, having the more point of views that you can have in a meeting room, the better for you. And the more diverse your team is, the better. Because again, having different perspectives is crucial, right, to being successful and to staying ahead. And so regardless of, if it's gender, sexuality, race, I think that, being able to embrace what's different about everyone and giving everyone room to come to the table can only work in our benefit. Yes.
So my first question is regarding to priorities. I noticed that Flora and Iris were sharing. You both mentioned that the first story that you want to share with is your husband, which I love. And I thought that what happens if the priorities are different and how to, I guess, evaluate, how do you process different priorities. And my second question is, also for efficiency, I realized that I do a lot of makeup and hair, and I basically spend over an hour in the morning. And I was wondering, how do girls come up with smarter solutions for saving time? So yeah, that's my question. And thanks for sharing.
I can answer your question around makeup because I don't like to wake up early and I don't have a lot of time. So basically, I just have one look. If I'm going to a wedding, it's this. When I'm going to work, it's this, right? But I think to your point, right? It's about going back to also what I shared about lifestyle, whatever. Finding something that works for you and then tweaking it for different occasions, because then at least you can understand how long it will take you. But understanding that if you want to do a different look every day, it's going to take a lot of time, right? But I think streamlining it really to what matters and then tweaking it for different occasions. I think that's valid.
I just want to make sure I understand the question. So basically, you're saying if me, for example, and my husband have different priorities, how do we prioritize? Is that the question? I think that. So if that's the question, because Jordan and I have very different priorities, actually. From the large,
right there.
From the big things, of course, we share the same values and we want to spend time with our kids and stuff like that. But on a more granular level and on a day-to-day level, we like to do different things, right? So we make sure that we carve out time to do both, and then we also do things together. So we have different priorities. You just need to make sure that you guys are both compromising as well. So as an example, right? I like to go out. He doesn't really like to go out. So then he will then stay at home and not go out. Whereas I will then go out with my girlfriends. It's a no solution, but at the same time, we also make sure, because as I was saying, after my child goes to sleep is when we're both free, right? So we also do make sure, one thing that we do together was we'll watch an episode on Netflix before that. So we do make sure that we have that same priority that we do together.
But I think, when your priorities are different, again, Dave and I, we also have different priorities. But I think that it's also being understanding. I think Dave is also very understanding of my schedule. For example, he's sitting here right now listening to this, even though everything I'm sharing he already knows. But I think also it's about being open-minded to share in your partner's interests. For instance, Dave loves video games. I don't really love video games, but it's something that I tried out. It turns out I actually do kind of like video games, but it's something that I kind of tried out, even though I didn't have that mindset too. But again, being open-minded and then being supportive, even if your priorities or things that you like are different.